Join the Knickerbocker All-Stars on Friday, May 23rd at 8 p.m. at the Knickerbocker Music Center. Dance the night away to songs you love and some of the greatest music ever made. Get your tickets now at nickmusic.com.
I'm in love with you, baby. But your mother's got to move.
Good afternoon, good day, good morning, wherever you're coming from. Could be international. But what we're talking about today is Mental Health Awareness Month in the month of May. And I have my friend and a guest, Glenn Nicholson, that can share some insights about mental illness, in particular, depression, anxiety, those particular things. You folks may not be suffering from a mental illness, but you may be suffering from some of the symptoms. And we'd be happy to bring that to your attention today and how you can combat it. So welcome, my friend Glenn. How are we making out?
Doing great. Glad to be here again.
Are you really
round
doing
two.
great, though?
Round two.
You're doing great. Are you really doing great, though?
I'm doing great. Managing. It's all about managing. As long as life is doable, that's the way I look at it.
That's
if you can thrive, that's beautiful. But you have your moments. The weather's not helping here. The weather's kind of like
but we're
all over the place.
But I will comment about the weather right now. There is a lot of green out there.
There's a lot
and
of green.
the lawns are green.
Lawns are green.
May and September, best months to have the grass.
They just laid down the mulch yesterday at my condo, so I'm
Ooh,
very happy about that.
nice.
Yeah.
Did you lay in the mulch or
No, none of that.
No, none of that. Didn't do any of
Nope.
that. None of that at all.
No.
So Glenn, why don't you enlighten us here as to the month of May, Mental Health Awareness Month? What's it all about? Tell us, kind of take us through your experiences, if you will, from what you have as far as knowledge.
Well, I want to start off by sharing some information about anxiety and depression. I had suffered with those elements critically, and about, 7 years ago, I was able to kind of go from dealing with that heaviness and then start my wellness journey. And thus why I wrote my book, Mindful Illumination, to help people who are struggling learn how to cope and deal with both anxiety, depression, or other challenges, mental health challenges.
Yeah. And that can be, it can be daunting, mental illness. I know it was for me. And when I was diagnosed with a mental illness in 2018 and found myself living in a psychiatric institution, it was just so foreign to me. But it really wasn't, because my thought process and my mindset was just doing what I was providing it. And the diagnosis for me, Glenn, was the real challenge. You know what I mean? I don't want to be diagnosed with bipolar. I don't want to be diagnosed with a mental illness. And it really isn't that. It's more to it than that. It's living your life in a way that, in a sense, prevents these negative ailments. Am I?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a negative connotation, bad myths, what things are and what they're not. I think if the average person told another person, hey, I'm suffering from depression, that other person would probably not even know how to open up a narrative to that.
Right.
And we talked about, it's opening up a narrative and losing the stigma. There's such an incredible stigma today. It's kind of ironic because all the researchers say that right now in the present moment, we are suffering a crisis, an epidemic when it comes to mental health. And unfortunately, it looks like it's only going to get worse from here on out. So the question is, what do we do with that? How do we cope? How do we support one another? How do we get the treatment that we may need to get us back on track again?
Right. And I tend to agree with that. But I will say this, now that I'm on somewhat the other side of the mental illness aspect. Bipolar, for me, that diagnosis was a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't going to say that. I wouldn't say that at the time when I was going through hell those 2 years, but
Mm-hmm.
it truly is a blessing. And I think God enabled me to contract that disease, because now, being that I've combated it and have the resources and the wherewithal to treat that on a daily basis, that makes all the difference in the world. And the same can be said for a regular woman that's in business that is suffering from stress at work, stress at home, and she's not necessarily diagnosed with mental illness, but how does she cope with all those things?
Exactly.
And that's what we can certainly provide some resources to our
Right.
audience in that respect.
Right. And like you said earlier, the adjective is daunting. When it becomes daunting and you feel like you're underwater and you can't breathe, and you're suffering. And most of this, unfortunately, most of us are suffering in silence and isolation. I call it the island of isolation. And when you're on this island, the probability of getting off isn't all that great. So that's why we need to get the support that we need. And that's why we need, each and every one of us need to become kind of educated about what some of the symptoms are, not only for ourselves, but for our loved ones, our family, our friends, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I'd like to spend a little time just breaking down what anxiety and depression
Yeah, I
are.
think that will help our audience
Okay.
get a better concept of exactly what it is.
Yeah, so I took a few notes. Anxiety, basically, it's an emotion, it's a physical state, it's troubling thoughts and beliefs. So that's basically what anxiety is. There's also something called GAD, G-A-D, which stands for Generalized Anxiety Disorder, which is severe, debilitating, ongoing anxiety that interferes with your daily activities, and it can occur at any age. And bottom line is, if you have this persistent, excessive, and unrealistic worry, you are probably dealing with generalized anxiety disorder. Some of the symptoms include muscle tension, fatigue, restlessness, headaches, lightheadedness, breathlessness, difficulty sleeping, irritability or edginess, and sometimes you experience kind of a lump in your throat or dry mouth. And basically, anxious thoughts can create anxious ways of being. So they go hand in hand. Your thoughts and your being, the way you're acting, how you're responding, they come together. So that's kind of the anxiety part. And as I said, I was suffering from it about 7 years ago. I suffered with it for many years. And I knew I had to turn my life around. I needed to find a way to think differently, to behave differently, to reframe some of those, crazy thoughts of the world's coming to an end. And reframing has been one of those. When I was going for cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the wonderful tools was reframing. We talked about that a little bit last time we were on.
So, Glenn, you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but say, for example, someone now suffers with this GAD, this general anxiety disorder.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to know the what, obviously, but I think it's even better to know the how to treat it, how to combat it. And is that something we can get into at some point?
Well, there's many things, and in Mindful Illumination, I shared some of those possibilities. But really, the most important thing you can do, if you know something's up, something's not right, you're not feeling right, especially over time, and you're just in this funk, you're in this rabbit hole, and you just feel like you can't get out of it, you really need to consult your doctor first and foremost, or a medical authority for some advice or a diagnosis. And then they can give you potential treatment, medication, talk about self-care. A lot of the information I provide in Mindful Illumination is about self-care. And we talked about a few of those things the last time we were on, just taking a walk, breath work, take a nice deep cleansing breath into the belly. There's assortment of different anxiety techniques that are natural, holistic. And there's just so much going on in your diet and the stress in your day, whether you're a student or you're going to work 40 hours or 70 hours a week. You're trying to balance life. You want to balance it all, and it's so hard. That's the ideal, if you find balance or create balance in your life. But it's something I learned. It had to become my priority. I needed to create peace and calm in me, and that way I could also share that with others. One of the most challenging things, Paul, which you probably seen, is like when there's someone who's really highly anxious, you feel that. You can feel that, and you start to and you start to feel for that person.
You're saying someone in the room.
Someone in a room who's struggling with anxiety. You can just feel the energy, and you start to feel very compassionate, like, how can I help you? Or, take a nice deep breath, or everything's going to be all right. The empathy part of ourselves kicks into gear, and you just want to help that person. But the most critical thing you can do is help yourself and do some of the things we talked about. Get treatment. Start doing some homework, try new things, explore new things, see what works for you. It could be as simple as some breath work and going for a walk every day for exercise if you're not exercising. And we talked about the power of exercise. You and I both hit the gym at the YMCA in Westerly. And, can you imagine not being told you're not able to work out ever again? It's like, there goes my psychological health right there, and never mind physical.
Certainly would be a challenge, that's for sure. And that's a great point that you make. But I think a lot of people, when they look at countering or treating mental challenges, it's not like you're physically sick and you go to the doctor, you get a prescription, and you're on your way. These are things that you need to exercise in your life, routines and strategies that you implement on a regular basis, that you do day in and day out, so it offsets any, dare I say, flare-ups or any issues when it comes to mental health. I think you and I both can be an example of that. We're not at our worst, but we're not at our worst because we're treating it every day in what we do. And that's very
Paul,
important.
The thing is it's not like all of a sudden one day you're like, I got it down to a science. This anxiety thing is history. Believe me, when I came in walking in here, I'm not going to lie, I was a little stressed. It's like, I definitely want to hit some key points, and it's there's a history of this anxiety. So it's not so much you never experience anxiety again. It's the question, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to cope when it arrives? What did I do, Paul? I took some deep breaths.
Is that what you did?
Absolutely, positively.
I think what helped is you shook my hand.
Remember this.
I have that touch.
Remember this. Your breath is your anchor.
That's why it's always fresh.
Your breath is your anchor. If you go back to your breath, that's where you take a nice deep breath in, like Paul just is doing now. Your parasympathetic nervous system kicks into gear, and you feel calm. It's just the way it works.
You got to do it regularly, and you have to do it regularly. You know what I mean? Because someone that's at an ultimate low and or high anxiety level, you can't just do it one time and think it's going to do it.
Right.
Anything repetition is the key.
Right. The other thing too, mindfulness. Being mindful. If I have shallow breathing, I'm very in tune to that, and something will kick in. I'll be like, "Hey, Glenn, you're taking some pretty shallow breaths here. That's not healthy. Take some deep breaths." So I take some deep breaths, and I'm on my way back to square one.
Yeah, I like that. And one of the things that I do particularly is I have a gratitude exercise that I do every morning, and I illustrate in my journal 10 things that I'm grateful for every day. And by writing that, it brings my mindset to a point of where I am and what I'm grateful for, as opposed to what I don't have or what I'm experiencing that I don't like. So gratitude is a great tool, but most people won't do it because it's so easy. It's like an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, that's not an apple on Wednesday or Tuesday and Friday. It's
Yeah.
an every day.
Well, that's powerful, Paul. The whole gratitude thing. I live in gratitude as much as I possibly can. I'm so grateful for the life I have. We both hit a wall, and you start. I call it ground zero. So in our hero's journey, you're going to hit ground zero, and you're going to have to kind of feel like you're starting all over, and it's not easy. But with that, you build resilience, you become stronger, you become wiser, and your confidence builds up, and you start to feel self-worth again, and feeling like you can take on bigger challenges.
I was just thinking about what you were saying there, and it can be very overwhelming for someone in our audience that maybe has some anxiety or stress issues and really doesn't understand or know how to combat them. And I think really what most people are missing is we talk about, and you've alluded to it before, nutrients, but one of the biggest nutrients is our sleep. And,
Absolutely, it's huge.
And I'm not saying you have to get another 2 hours of sleep per night, but how about getting better quality sleep per night? And what are you doing to prepare yourself for bed and those types of things? So take us into something along those lines.
Well, I'm with you. Sleep. I'm like a baby. I'm regressing to my childhood, and I require a lot more sleep, especially if I have a really decent, really good gym workout and I play pickleball. So my body's getting beat up. I'm not young anymore. I'm going to be 58 in October. So the reality is, I'm feeling it, the joints and so forth, and the recovery time takes longer. So again, it's a matter of self-care. It's a matter of taking care of yourself. And, these little, we call them little things. Breath work is not a little thing. Try stop breathing for an hour straight. It's probably not going to work for you. Yeah. I'm not a deep diver, but,
I'm capped out at 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm done in 30, but, anyway,
30 minutes?
No, 30 seconds, But, anyhow, you find your way. The thing is I can give you a list of things that work for me. But the bottom line is you got to go out there and explore some different possibilities. You might be into yoga. I've done yoga before, but I'm 6'6". I'm not really the best cat to be doing yoga. I'm not going to lie. So do I enjoy yoga? Yeah, I think it's amazing. But there's other things I do. I enjoy walking, and I enjoy meditation. I enjoy being at the gym. I enjoy social environment, being able to talk to friends at the gym or what have you. So you got to, again, the word is balance. How you decide to balance that out is your privilege, your choice. And again, explore different things, try some new things. It could be sound therapy. Maybe you really enjoy and connect with sound therapy, listening to a gong. There's just so much out there.
What do you mean, listening to a gong?
They'll strike a gong, and the sound, the vibrations, the frequencies that come from the gong.
Therapeutic.
Yeah, it puts you in this really meditative mode. It's not something I do personally, but I know it works for some others. So again, explore. That's the fun part. Explore and try things out.
Yeah.
And maybe give it a couple tries. You might try meditation, and for whatever reason, you're kind of really feeling anxious at the time. Probably wasn't the best time to try to meditate. But don't be like, oh, I suck at meditation because I tried it once, it didn't work. Right. You gotta give it a couple tries, and maybe try different styles. There's hundreds of styles of meditation. So,
and the funny thing is, you mentioned the gong. 321 Studios is going to have a sale on gongs.
Bingo.
Extra large, large, and small gongs with the hammer. So check in with us. We'll let you know how to go ahead and do that one aspect. But I think what's also important is we come from a society where people are looking for the magic pill, the magic potion, the magic shot, lotion, whatever it may be. And that's not so much the case here when it comes to treating mental challenges, and it really needs to be said that, yes, support is great. Help is great. Therapy is great. Therapy can come in a number of forms, but we have to actually get out there and do it, even though we may not want to. And that's the key. And that's what I had to do. And I wasn't happy about it, but I did it.
Remember as a child, you were told repetition is the mother of all learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
I
a
was
lot of
told
truth to that.
2 hours ago.
Okay. This is a PG,
Yeah.
PG show.
No, what I'm saying is I was just told that one thing about a couple hours ago in my
Yeah.
study. You know,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, maybe more than a couple hours ago, but it was
Right.
today, you know,
Right.
that.
So Paul, I'd like to hit one more thing.
Hit it.
We talked about depression. We talked about anxiety. I'd like to also offer a little information about depression, which is something I think you as well as I have experienced some
Major
clinical depression.
almost suicidal, I guess you could say.
So with that, I want to share depression is basically common mental health condition characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, loss of interest or pleasure in activities previously enjoyed. Some of the symptoms include, not limited to, persistent low mood, sadness, changes in appetite or weight, sleep disturbances like insomnia or excessive sleeping, fatigue or loss of energy, difficulty concentrating or making decisions, irritability or agitation, feelings of unworthiness or guilt, and as you were mentioning just a little bit ago, the suicidal ideation or self-harm. So those are some of the symptoms, many symptoms of depression. And here's a few numbers for you. The National Institute of Mental Health, I wish we had more current information because the numbers I have are back from 2021. So basically in 2021, there were 21 million Americans suffering with major depression.
We know that's increased.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can think about that. That's about 1 in 12 people. I imagine it's close to that. And
Probably 1 in 10 now.
Yeah, I'm sure the number has gone up.
But nonetheless, the point is,
it's still, there's a lot of people, and a lot, these 21 million are the ones who are diagnosed. That's not talking about the people who are suffering in silence.
So we know, right.
So we know that 21 million is just maybe the tip of the iceberg. There's a wealth of other people who are suffering from it, again, who aren't getting the medical care that they need. So 15.4 million adults are dealing with persistent depression, meaning they've dealt with it for 2 or more years. 3.7 million adolescents aged 12 to 17 are dealing with it. 3.7 million, almost 4 million kids. And again, that number, I would imagine with COVID and everything else has been going on, that number's risen, maybe even dramatically. For kids, for young adults, ages 18 to 25, about almost 20% are dealing with some depression. And finally, females, about a little over 10% of females are dealing with depression, and about a little over 6% for males. The good news is that depression, anxiety, they are treatable. And like we had talked about, therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, those are your go-tos. You got to figure out what's going to work for you. And finally, if you have a chronic condition, you may continue ongoing management until you start to feel better.
Yeah, that was great. And I think what's important what also has a stigma is therapists. But a lot of professional athletes have therapists as well. But those therapists are also called coaches. They got a speed coach, a strength coach, a fundamental coach, all these different coaches. And if a counselor type therapist doesn't necessarily work for you, or it's difficult to obtain, then I would strongly suggest finding another type of therapist, whether it be on YouTube or, dare I say, God. I found mine in church. I really do. And that really helps as well. So try it all, folks, and see what you can do. So, Glenn, as we wrap up here, what would be a good thing for an audience member that deals with some of these things that you were talking about? How can they get in touch with you? What's the easiest way?
I don't, it's not really, I would want them to seek medical attention first and foremost.
Right.
I am not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I've had my own personal battles. I've learned some things along the way. I've done some research and I wrote a book, Mindful Illumination.
Maybe they can get your book.
Yeah. So that, I guess that's the segue. I really recommend check out Mindful Illumination. The subtitle is
Can we
called
hold it up here? Is it the camera right there?
And the camera's not on.
It's on.
Oh, it is on.
Yeah.
It looks pretty black to me.
It's a black
It's all
camera.
good. I can't see myself. It's all good. I don't need to
It
see
must
me.
be the shades.
Yeah. So anyway, Mindful Illumination. There's a lot of
Wonderful.
powerful information in there. A lot of aha moments. It really touched your heart, touched your soul, and took me 4 years, and I couldn't be happier. And you talk about gratitude. I have all the gratitude in the world for the people who helped me put this together, including my dear sister who helped me with formatting and all that good stuff, getting on Kindle. So there's also, just so you know, Paul's a coach, so you might want to get a hold of him. And just so you know, there are other coaches in the resources of the book if that interests you.
Wonderful. Well said, Glenn. Thank you. Ben, I appreciate the time, the platform. This was good. And we'll check in with you again, probably for Community Insights at some point, talking to one of our community members. Glenn, thank you again.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All righty.